Carol was told her life was over. She didn't believe them. Today I'm having a cuppa with Carol Cooke.
This is Chocolate and Coffee Break, a compassionate proposition, a space to share stories, bridge divides, and spark meaningful connections. So grab your chocolate, pour your cuppa, and let's break down barriers, one conversation at a time. And now, here's your host, Andrea Pudding.
And welcome to Chocolate and Coffee Break, where we slow down, listen to stories, and remember what really connects us. So grab your cuppa and your chocolate and settle in for another episode. So today I'm joined by a friend who happens to be a Paralympian, three-time gold medalist. She's also an advocate and someone who's turned her life's unexpected moments into something deeply meaningful. But today is not about those gold medals, it's about who Carol became when life changed and how compassion shaped that journey. So, welcome, Carol Cooke.
Thank you, Andrea. It's wonderful to be here.
And I like to start the show with one of my heart-opening questions, which just start the conversation nicely. So today my question is, what's something about your journey that feels important?
Wow. I think that, my journey has had so many ups and downs, but I think for me, it's remembering that it's never too late. It's never too late following a dream. And no matter what happens in life, you can overcome it and you can follow that dream.
And that's an amazing message for all of us. And we'll explore that more as we go. So, Carol, I want to start with a diagnosis that you had some years ago that really did change, became an unexpected, created this unexpected journey. So, would you like to share with us a little about that?
Yeah, it was almost 28 years, actually. It was April 23rd, 1998. And I'd had some unusual symptoms for months. Um, Balance issues, fatigue, my eyesight was going. And I was sent to a neurologist who sent me for a whole bunch of tests. And I remember the day, that 23rd of April, I was heading to get the results. And I felt like a fraud because all my symptoms had disappeared overnight. And I thought I was just wasting his time. And when I got there and he opened the door to his office, he was in a really not a great mood and a really gruff voice said, "Come in and sit down." And he wouldn't look at me, pulled out a big film, which turns out it was my MRI film. And he said, "Oh, there's too many lesions on your brain for someone your age. So you've got multiple sclerosis. And basically, your life is, it's over. So I'd suggest you go home and put your affairs in order before you come incapacitated." I got no information that day. I knew about multiple sclerosis, MS, because I grew up in Canada with the readathon. It was actually started by my grade 7 librarian, but I didn't know what it was. And so that day, I don't remember driving home. And I think I made decisions that you should never make when you hear traumatic news. And I was very lucky that I have a husband who set me straight and said, "Look, we're not making any decisions till we find out about this disease." So it was a real, going from somebody who'd never been sick a day in their life. I grew up doing sport, um, you know, everything that you could think of in Canada. And I was master swimmer here. I was running around a football field looking after injuries of the players. And all of a sudden I was now living with a chronic progressive illness. So it was a shock, definitely a shock.
Absolutely. I can't imagine what that would have felt like. And I, because I've heard your story before, and I just kind of in it just blows my mind that the doctor was so insensitive.
I think he should have retired many years before. He was the first neurologist that my GP could actually get me into. So he actually, before I left, he said that he had enough people with MS that he was dealing with, so he didn't want to take me on as a patient. So I
Thank
had to go back
goodness.
to my. I know. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted him anyway. But yeah, it. Oh my God, it was just. I think, people have said to me, "Have you gone back to him to tell him what you've accomplished?" And I just say, "No, why waste the energy? And besides, that was 28 years ago, so he's probably dead and I'm not." Because he was probably in his 70s and he should never have been practicing. But, it was what it was, unfortunately. But that diagnosis actually spurred me on. So I can thank him for that.
So when did you decide? What made you decide that you weren't going to let MS define who you are or what you did in your life?
I think at first it was that grieving process that anybody would go through. At first, I didn't believe it. Like there was no way my symptoms were gone. My GP thought I had an inner ear infection, which was causing some of these things. And I thought that's what it was. There's
Mm.
just no way this is happening. And it probably took me about 6 months to come to terms with the fact that I was living with a chronic progressive illness. And at that point, I decided, I mean, my mom has always said that I've been pigheaded and stubborn. So I think I was born that way. But I just decided that there's no way that he's going to rule my life, that what he said is going to rule my life, that MS wasn't who I was. It was just one part of me. And I wasn't going to stop doing what I was doing.
Yeah, for someone so active, it just
Mm.
boggles my mind to one day be thinking to be living your life as a very active person, very involved in sports and activities, and then suddenly you bang, hang on, you're being told that you can't do anything anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that one word he said, and I spent less than 2 minutes in his office. He was just did not want me there. And that one word, incapacitated, like I went to the real dark side of that word that day, thinking it meant being bedridden 24/7, unable to look after myself in any sense of the word. So the fact that I got no information, and it's my GP, who I actually still see to this day, that contacted the MS Society, as it was known back then, got lots of information, found another neurologist who was younger, and actually had made me an appointment to see him. So it was my GP that he just said, I can't look after you. Like this is a specialist needs to do this. So yeah, it was him and my husband that set me on the right path to say, let's find out first the information we need.
Mm. And information wouldn't have been so readily available 28 years ago. I just kind of doing the calculations in my mind. While the internet was around, it was new, so we didn't have the Google to, which might have been a good thing, but the information wasn't so readily available, and I can imagine you would have had to be off doing a whole lot of research on your own to discover what this all meant to your life.
Oh, exactly. And that's the good thing about my GP, because when he phoned the MS Society, they said, "Oh, well, we'll send her lots of things." And they were pamphlets, and you're
Yeah,
right. It's a good thing there wasn't Dr. Google at the time, because if you look now and Google it, it's dire,
overwhelmed.
it's just overwhelmingly, well, the worst can happen, when in fact there's different types of MS. And so, different things can happen, and no two people are alike.
No,
My symptoms are nothing like somebody else that I might know who has MS. No two people present the same way. We might have similar things that happen, but I could have five things happening at one time and somebody else could only have two or one thing happening.
yeah,
So it's very individualized. And so Dr. Google would have been an absolute disaster. And when I talk to newly diagnosed people, I just say, do not go on the internet and look up what can happen, because it's not,
definitely
you know,
not.
yeah, it's not the right thing to do.
So let's have a quick chocolate break and see what our sponsors are who are helping us make this show happen. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment.
When I hit perimenopause, all I heard was doom and decline until I took a sacred pause and I went searching for women who are radiant after menopause, like Dr. Christiane Northrup, Dr. Vandana Shiva, and the late Dr. Gladys McGarry, still shining at 103. In this book, I share their stories and wisdom and the magic that menopause truly holds. 7 Wonders of Menopause is a sacred reminder. You're not ending, you're returning. Available at independent bookshops in Australia and Amazon around the world.
Did you know that only 30% of speakers are women and that only 13% of panels feature women? In order to change that, there is now a directory at womenspeakers.com.au where you can go and search for a speaker. We also have groups on Facebook and LinkedIn under the name Australian Women Speakers, where you can just go and post about your event and women will respond.
And we're speaking with Carol Cooke today and about her MS and becoming a Paralympian. So, Carol, what I'd like to know is what do people often misunderstand about living with something invisible? Because I know with MS, some days you're fine and you would know that there was nothing wrong with you. But for other people, they may be in a wheelchair and it's obvious. So, what does living with an invisible disability
Yeah,
show?
it's unbelievable how, I don't know, cruel some people can be, I guess. You know, I remember walking my dog. This was right after I was diagnosed, and I looked fine. And it was Good Friday, and we lived down the road from a Catholic church, and so they were having mass or whatever it was that morning. And I remember walking the dog, and all of a sudden, I just got so dizzy that I fell over, and I must have looked drunk. And these two little Italian ladies walked by me, didn't ask if I was okay, just shook their head, going, and on Good Friday. And my dog was so used to me falling down that she would just sit down beside me and wait till I was ready to get up. And, I just kind of went, okay, I'm good. I'm fine. Thanks for asking. Um, and I guess the other thing is parking in disabled spots. I use a walking stick now and a wheelchair sometimes. So my disability is visible, but there are people who don't, and they'll still have a disabled parking sticker on their car because they might get to a shopping mall and not have a parking spot close enough to the door and get so fatigued that they might not even get back to their car if they're on the back side of the parking lot. So they're given these disabled stickers for a reason. And I had one lady that I know of who came back out to her car, and somebody had taken an A4 size sticker and written on it, "Do not park in disabled parking when you're not disabled," and stuck it on the window right at the driver's eye level. And of course, she couldn't get it out. She couldn't get it off. It just, it had stuck so much that it really caused issues for her, actually trying to drive. So it's just, there has to be a bit of compassion. And I guess that's why I joined the ambassador program through the MS Society, to go out and speak to groups and actually educate them on MS and what it is and how different it is for everybody. And hopefully, in some little way, I'm doing my bit to help, because it is really hard when you have an invisible disability.
So you also started a bit of a charity yourself with Mega Swim. I'd love you to share with us what you do with
Yeah,
that.
back in 2000, or back in 1999, one of the workers from the MS Society um, des- decided she wanted to raise some money, and she wanted to raise $10,000. And she had a charity lunch because the Olympics were being held in Sydney, and she was involved in diving. So she knew a lot of the volunteers. So she had a lunch and got the head of the volunteers to come and be a speaker. She charged for the lunch. She raised $10,000. So she decided to hold scholarships for people living with MS of $2,000 that you could apply for. And she did that for 2 years. She had funding for, the next year she got funding from a couple of universities. But on the third year, she had no funding. And she came to me, and we were kind of brainstorming what we could do, and approached my workplace, who were, big nationwide company. And no, they weren't interested, even though they had a number of people with MS working for them. And so I thought, well, my swim club, our master's club, we could do a 24-hour swim and raise the sports scholarship. She had 5 different categories. And when I mentioned it to the president, she said, well, why don't we just invite others and try and raise it all? And I said, oh, that'll be a lot of work. And she says, oh, no, we'll help. And then 2 weeks later, she quit. Um, but I kept going, and I roped in some friends, and I spoke to the local council, and we got the pool for free. So we didn't have to pay for the pool. They even staffed it, they even put in a team. And that first year, I think we had 10 teams. We swam for 24 hours. Each team did it the way they thought they could do it. And all of a sudden, at the end of it, we'd raised $22,000. I'd only wanted
Wow.
to raise 10. And so I was really excited. I thought, oh, well, my job's done. I've got her 2 years worth of scholarships. And we were handing out some awards at the end, for different crazy things. And somebody at the back of the room yelled, when is it next year? And I just went,
Uh-oh.
no, 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 this is 1 year. And the pool said, oh no, we'll still help. And I'm like, oh. And I'm happy to say it's still going. And this weekend is the mega swim at the Fitzroy pool for the 26th year.
Wow.
I ran it for 20 years, and I'm happy to say that, in that 20 years, we had other pools come on board in other states as well. So
Fantastic.
New South Wales, Victoria, like the whole east side, Tasmania, they all put swims on. And in that 20 years that I was running it, we raised just over $11 million,
That's
um,
amazing.
which was incredible. And there's still about 5 running. And I retired at 20 years. I said,
That's an op
I'm done. They didn't believe me that year. I said that I was done. I said, no, 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 this is it. You're going to have to run it yourself. And so, yeah, MS has been running
So what happens with those scholarships?
the scholarships. We actually grew the scholarships. So we would give, we had one woman that her daughter applied for a scholarship. And so this is the type of things they went to. Um, Her daughter was getting married in another state. She was living in country Victoria in a nursing home. She was only in her 50s, but she had become, her MS was very progressive, and she had basically become a quadriplegic, and she couldn't actually sit up in a chair. So to get to this other state, she needed to go by road ambulance and have a day bed that, they could hire. It was going to cost them like $6,000 to do this. So our committee, we decided, and it was made up of a number of different people. We decided to give her $10,000. And she was able to, she was so surprised that her daughter had applied for her, but she was able to take this road ambulance there and back. And it was a good journey. Like it was, 7-hour journey each way. And they were able to hire a day bed They were able to buy her a new outfit. And to be
Amazing.
honest, the pictures that I got back of her with this huge smile on her face, dressed to the nines in this beautiful dress with, her daughter on the side was great.
Yeah. It makes it all worthwhile, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's jump to another ad break and enjoy a bit more chocolate.
Introducing 123 Read to Me. We give books to children who don't have books so they can succeed. Help us give away books to supported playgroups, kindergartens, schools, community events. Come and sort books. Donate money. $5 equals one book in the hand of a child. Because just one book a day creates clever, kind and confident kids. 123 Read to Me. If this interests you, let's talk.
You've ticked the boxes: career, commitments, calendar that's more packed than your pantry, but something's still missing. In Compassionate Purpose, Andrea Putting invites you to stop chasing busy and start living with intention. This book is about real fulfillment through small acts of compassion, purpose-driven service, and meaning that last. No pressure, no perfection, just purpose with heart. Compassionate Purpose, Discovering a Life of Fulfillment. Search for Andrea Putting on Amazon.
I'm here with Carol Cooke, and I'd love to find out how she went from being diagnosed with MS to being a Paralympian with 3-time gold medal.
I kind of fell into it. Isn't that funny? It was just something I never expected to be doing. I was still swimming as a master swimmer, and I found out in 2005 at the World Masters Games that they were having para categories for swimming and athletics. And I thought, oh, do I classify as a para with MS? So I went to the classification, and I did. I classified as an S10 swimmer, and I went and did the World Games and did really well and came back with some medals. And the Paralympics Australia had somehow heard about me, sent me an email and said, oh, you should come to a talent search day. They had no idea that I was 44 years old. And talent search days are usually for kids up until, mid 20s. And so I emailed them back and I said, I'm a bit old for this. And they said, oh, come anyway. So I did all the testing with the kids. And about 2 weeks later, I got a letter saying, we want you to take up the sport of rowing. And it's new in Beijing. And so I'm like, okay. So I found a club and I learned how to row. And I actually made the national team in 2008, just in like January. And we went to the World Cup to try and classify and get the last couple spots. There was a couple spots left for Beijing, and we missed by 0.8 of a second. And it was absolutely heartbreaking, but kept rowing the following year. We were 6th at the World Championships. And we all thought, I was in a 4, and we all thought, oh, we've got 3 years now to train until London. And about a year later, Rowing Australia dumped our crew. They were more interested in developing the more disabled crews who had already medaled on the world stage. And so one of the girls that was in the boat with me, she said, why don't you come and cycle? And I said, what do you mean? And I'd had a trike because my balance, I can't balance on 2 wheels. So I'd had a trike made to just ride back and forth to rowing training. And she goes, oh, they have a trike category at the Paralympics. So it's a para sport. And I had no idea how to race this thing. I got it up on a garment truck because I couldn't fly it. It was so heavy, up to Queensland. And I did my first ever time trial. I just had no idea what I was doing. I put my head down. I just went as hard as I could. It was me against the clock, out and back. And when I finished, the head coach came up to me and he's like, where the hell did you come from? And I'm like, oh, Melbourne. And he said, no. In the cycling world, I said, I'm not a cyclist. I'm a rower. And he went, no, you're not. You are definitely a cyclist. He says, you just smashed the qualifying speed for your category. And I went, oh, what was that? And he went, oh, I've got to talk to your coach. And I said, well, keep talking because I have a rowing coach, but I don't have a cycling coach. And that was my start. That was 2011. 4 months later, I was at my first world championships where I won 2 silver medals. I was disappointed because he kept telling me I was the fastest female T2 rider in the world. But a Canadian girl was told she was the same thing, and she was, and I wasn't. Um, but yeah, the next thing I knew, I was in London and had to race the men in London because there weren't enough women. And I still beat them, which was kind of good, um, but completely unexpected. And I guess, I just kept riding um, because I became passionate about it. And it was a real social outlet. I joined a club and I was riding with other women who were riding normal bikes, but they were quite happy with me on the trike. And yeah, it just went from there. And I never thought I would be at my second, let alone third games. I mean, my third games were at the age of 60 because obviously Tokyo was put off a year because of the pandemic. And to be honest, yeah, I won 3 gold medals, one in London, 2 in Rio. In Tokyo, I ended up winning silver. And I remember standing on the podium looking at my silver medal, and I looked to my left, and the girl standing there was 31 and I was 60. And I just looked at my medal and I thought, this is my gold medal moment. It doesn't matter that it's a different color because I'm double her age. So yeah, it was fabulous to be able to be there and still be standing on the podium.
Yeah. And the amazing thing is about this, I mean, besides the point, it's almost like besides the point that you have MS, the fact that you were doing this at age 60 against women half your age and coming out on top. Now, for any any woman in this kind of age bracket, you just go, wow, that's just, hang on a minute, what am I doing? I don't think I could do it.
No, but you know what? I started out slowly, it was a
Mm.
gradual build, and I found that exercise has kept me walking. And I honestly believe that, without the exercise, I'd probably be using my chair all the time. That first neurologist told me I would never do sport again. And back then, they didn't think that sport helped or exercise helped. We've now since learned that exercise is the best thing to keep you walking, to keep you going. And they now have different MS societies that have introduced exercise programs and exercise physiologists into their own offices because they know it helps.
Yeah.
So, I'll keep riding as long as long as I can, and I'll always exercise because it's something that is just a part of me.
Yes. Well, you've certainly proved that. So for someone who's just been told what they never wanted to hear, what would you want them to know?
Life doesn't end with a diagnosis, and it doesn't matter what that diagnosis is. It could be MS, it could be something else, it could be a cancer, scare. I've been there as well. But life doesn't end. And if you can keep one positive thought, I had a 9-year-old ask me at a school once if I could turn back the clock and change the fact that I was diagnosed with MS, would I? And it really made me think because nobody'd ever asked me that. And I said to her, no, I wouldn't, because it gave me opportunities that I never would have had. And I love my life now. And so I think that if you believe in yourself and your abilities, you can overcome anything. And it's keeping that positive mindset.
And thank you, Carol. And where can we find you on social media?
Well, I do have a website. It's just carolcooke.com.au, or Instagram is CazCooke61.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carol. And this week, your Brew the Change challenge is to think twice about those who you see that are struggling and maybe offer them the ear. Listen to their story and see what challenges they've overcome. It might just inspire your life. And Until next time, let love be the loudest voice.